All right, ethical inquiry number one. Exciting stuff. Step one, we got to make sure that you have a copy of the assignment prompt. I'm hoping you already do because you took my advice earlier in the semester and downloaded it so that you could be taking notes on it. But if you didn't, you need to get a copy of that assignment prompt right away. And the way you do that, there's two ways you can do that. One is you could go all the way back to thought primer number 3, and you'll see that there is a link to that assignment right here. Or you could click the assignment links right here, assignments link in Canvas, go to the assignment page, and in upcoming assignments, you'll see ethical inquiry number 1, surveying the ethical landscape. Click on that, and that's going to take you to a page that's important for a couple of reasons, and I'm going to come back to that here in a little bit. Right now, focus on this. There's a link here to the assignment prompt, and it's going to give you a Microsoft Word document that I hope looks familiar to you. And I want to talk to you here just quickly about some things to keep in mind as you work on this assignment this week. First thing I want you to take note of, you're not writing an essay, you're not writing a report, you're not writing, what you are writing are responses to question sets. So I'm asking you specific questions about the ethical theories we've been looking at, and your job is to just respond to those questions. And it's important for you to keep this in mind. As I've said before, the goal of this course is not to turn you into an ethical person. I don't even know that that's possible. Not because you're irredeemable, but because I don't know that one person can make another person ethical by teaching them about ethical theories. First of all, it assumes that I'm an ethical person, unsafe assumption. Second assumption, I know how to create an ethical person, really unsafe assumption. So remember, as you're responding to these question sets, that the goal here is not to show that you think a particular way that you think pleases me. The goal is to explore each of these ethical theories and clarify for yourself, what do I value? What is important to me? And which of these theories seems to also value those things and which don't? Which ideas are worth embracing and considering further? Which ideas do I think should be rejected? Okay, so just keep that in mind, that the goal of the assignment is to help you get clarity. Now, as you look at each one of these question sets, again, you'll notice that they are the 7 question sets relate to the different ethical theories we've been exploring. And your job is to go into these question sets and just respond to each of the prompts. So you're going to go into question set 1, and you're going to have a response that says 1A. And your response to 1A is going to define subjective relativism. And you want to be sure to include some indication of exactly what makes a particular action moral or immoral to a subjectivist. Question 1B, what would people find attractive about this theory? Think about its potential strengths. Question 1C, what would people find unattractive about this theory? And so you're going to work through each of these question sets, and you'll see that some of the questions are similar for the different ethical theories, but then there's going to be questions that are kind of unique to those ethical theories because they get at some core principle that's important to understand. Now, I just want to give you a piece of advice. And I've taught English at CR for 20 years, I think, at this point. And one of the things that we contend with in English, but really anything, history, philosophy, is that by the time someone sits down to write something, they've probably been thinking about those ideas for a while. And as they're thinking about them, as they're driving to school or they're going on a walk or reading about them at home or in the library, your brain starts to make connections between these ideas, and you start to develop a sense of clarity in your own mind about what things mean and what things are important. And then when we go to sit down and put this on paper in response to questions here, that really valuable knowledge that we have created in our minds over some period of time is so familiar to us that when we see sort of like a shorthand version of that knowledge on the paper, we're filling in the gaps for ourselves. And that knowledge doesn't make its way to the paper or to the computer. And so as a consequence, then, you're not going to have an assignment submission that explains things very effectively. So what I would encourage you to do is to think about how you would address these question prompts to a conversation partner, right? Because if you have a conversation partner, that person is there to just sort of constantly interrupt what you're saying with questions. Well, wait, stop. What do you mean by that term? I don't understand. Can you explain that more? Can you give me an example? And so as you're responding to these question sets, maybe think about what that conversation partner you would have would be saying as you're writing your responses. And that'll help you flesh out the ideas more, so that by the time it comes to somebody who hasn't been thinking about those ideas, they're fleshed out in a way that would make them familiar with what you think about them. All right? So you'll work through these different question sets, and when you're all done, it'll all be in one package, one file, and you'll go back to this assignment page. And there's a couple of things I want you to take note of. One is, the due date, but the other is this grading criteria down here. This assignment is worth 100 points. This rubric shows you what you get points for. So at the top, you'll see here, you get 5 points out of the 100 just for getting this thing in on time. Okay, and you get 2.5 points if you submit it 7 days, within 7 days of the due date. And you can still turn it in beyond that. You just don't get those points. Okay, so 5 points for getting it in on time, 2.5 points for getting it in with the week, and then 0 points for the timeliness of the submission anytime after that. But then as you work your way through this assignment rubric, you'll see that each of those questions in the question sets has a particular number of points associated with it. Okay, and when I read this thought primer from you, or I'm sorry, this ethical inquiry from you, I'll be clicking these boxes as I read it, like, oh, that's a really effective response, I'm going to give them full points for that. I think, oh, that's kind of in the neighborhood, it's okay, I'll give them not full points, but less than full points. And anytime I do that, or actually more than that, for a lot of the questions, you'll see me writing comments in the margins like, oh, this is a really effective response you had here, or hey, maybe think about it this way. Now, one thing I want to bring your attention to is down here at the bottom. Source use, 10 points out of 100. Quotes from the course texts are used effectively in many answers. Okay, so you get 10 points for offering quotes from the texts that we've been studying. That means beginning ethics, that means justice, that means any of the articles that are linked in Canvas. Okay, and I want you to use quotes from the texts that we've been studying for a couple of reasons. One, it'll help you kind of flesh out your ideas. But two, you're not an expert in ethics. And so when we find ourselves in that position where we're not an expert in something and we want to be taken seriously, it's really good practice to be incorporating ideas from people who are experts into our explanations, our descriptions, and our arguments, because that way we're able to say, look, even though I'm not an expert, you can see how the ideas I'm offering you are supported by or in alignment with what the experts actually say in this field. All right, so don't forget to quote out of your course texts as you're fleshing out these answers. I think Vaughn will be very helpful to you for a lot of the problems where he's describing, this is what cultural relativism or conventionalism is. And then when you're all done, you can come up here, go to submit assignment, and then you'll be ready to upload your file and send it off for my reading pleasure. All right, questions come up, you email me and we'll get it all figured out.